You can't shoot anywhere. You can't make any shots. It's the greatest shooting arena in the world. There's nothing like it for high school basketball either. It's like every kid's dream to play in Philadelphia was to play in the playoffs at the Palestra. Unbelievable.
How many times you played
there? Unfortunately, my team that I was on, never got a chance to play there, except when I was a sophomore. But I got to coach in the Catholic League final there, which was pretty cool.
Come on,
those guys lost. Some Roman Catholic. Or no, they lost to Chief Banks' team, I think. Go ahead.
Coming off a 104-point game, does that say something about where your offense is now? I mean, did the work week serve you guys well? Are you flowing better, or was that just an anomaly? And
yeah, I think it maybe is a combination of things. The time off probably did help a little bit, although, you know, Nika made it a point to tell me she hates when we have 2 days off. She said that does absolutely nothing for me. 1 day off is good, 2 is not good. So I don't know, but I'm sure it had some effect. The other is DePaul plays a style where there's just a tremendous amount of possessions by both teams, and I think that contributed to it. You know, I'm again Paige and Aaliyah doing what they've been doing, and if you give them a lot of opportunities and they're actually playing really, really well, you know, you're going to get 50-some just out of those two. So I don't think you can pinpoint it to just one thing. But if you watch the film, I mean, our offense was very, very, very stagnant at times, and then we just got buckets out of, you know, random stuff that didn't make any sense. So we still have some work to do offensively. We're still not shooting the ball as well as we did a while back. But maybe, you know, we're getting to the free throw line a little bit more. Who knows? But we got a lot of work to do, I think. I don't think Villanova's going to let us score 104.
Paige is getting to the free throw line more than ever this year. How much does that have to do with muscle she may put on the offseason, or is it just being a smarter player with more experience and kind of learning how to draw more fouls?
Well, she says it's because people are finally calling actual fouls that occur. She's a big believer that for the last couple of years, you know, they don't treat her like a superstar. Officials don't treat her that way. And she, you know, she's often said to me, you know, I watch games on TV and I see what kids get away with that are supposedly the best players, and she goes, I don't get treated like that. And to the point why she asked me one day, are you going to get a technical from me or what? So when I was on the verge of getting one, she got all mad because she didn't want me to get thrown out. So I think they are calling the actual fouls that people actually foul her a lot. But I think it's happening at the expense of she passes up open threes, which in my mind, I'd rather her take an easy 3 than a difficult 2 and hope to get fouled. But she's a little bit stronger. She's feeling, you know, a little more confident. So it could be, you know, it could be a combination of things. Let's just hope it keeps going.
Is there
Go ahead.
Okay. Is there preparation for March? I know it's like a week away, different now this year because you know who you have versus last year when there's people still coming in now. You weren't quite sure how many minutes people can play.
Yeah, the last couple of years have been really weird because both times we were anticipating people coming back just in time for the Big East tournament and the postseason, which, to be honest, made it difficult to incorporate them back into the rotation after being out for so long. Right now, we don't seem to be in that situation. You know, we have a pretty good idea. This is our group. This is what we have. This is the way the rotation works. You know, now it's making sure that our freshmen who are going to be going through it for the first time can perform at a real high level. That's the great unknown all the time.
Aaliyah was talking a little bit about how she and Paige have gotten a chance to actually sort of show their connection this year. I mean, just what is it about the two of them that complements each other so well, especially the way that they're playing right now in the two-man?
Yeah, I want to say that it's probably due to a change in that Aaliyah's not sharing those ball screen actions with Dorka. You know, she's pretty much the only one. So that's helped. Two, what's helped is Paige is usually being guarded by a forward who's not used to guarding the person with the ball in a ball screen. They're used to guarding the guy in the ball screen. So there's been, you know, a great connection between the two of them. And three, we're specifically running more plays for the two of them to get involved in ball screen actions. And they're getting smarter at reading it. So it's a lot of things that are kind of falling into place. Again, I'm always looking at what's the danger in doing too much of one thing. Running Paige and Aaliyah in ball screen action, the other teams kind of load up and leave players open. So they don't care how many threes KK's made this year, or Ash has made, or Nika has made. They're just wanting to play off those guys and say, I don't care how many you've made. We don't think you're going to make as many as Paige and Aaliyah are going to make, so we're going to make you shoot it. So in order to run a lot of those actions, those other guys have to be feeling pretty good and have to be in a pretty good groove. So it's kind of like a chess game.
Nika's,
Go ahead. How much do you think the visibility of success from players like Paige and Caitlin Clark have helped grow the game, so to speak, or just helped the game maybe the way some other iconic players, some of them on the wall here, have done for the game along the way?
The one thing about college sports is that fans get to know you over a long period of time. You know, people thought that was one of the downsides of, on the men's side, players, you know, being able to take advantage of a one and done, is that players don't associate with teams. Teams don't become synonymous with certain players. You don't get to see, you know, an 18-year-old freshman come to school and watch them grow, you know, over 3-4 years, you know, like you did with, let's say, with Ray, or, you know, those guys when he was here. You know, even Kemba, you know, guys like that. On the women's side, we've always had that 4-year window where they can impact the school and the the basketball fan, the average fan out there, you're either a fan of the school or you're a fan of certain players. And a lot of times you like for it to be both, you know? So when you get somebody like Caitlin Clark or Paige or Angel Reese or whoever is making a name for themselves during a stretch, Leah Boston did. Just the last couple of years, there seems to have been more of widespread recognition of female athletes in every sport, and basketball's benefited from that. It's obviously been a long time coming. When we traveled back before all this other stuff, the crowds that Maya generated, that Stewie generated, that, those guys didn't have necessarily as much of a benefit as these kids do of social media. And now it's just been magnified. And it's the right, it's the right kind of kids with the right kind of personalities and, everything that goes into being popular and being impactful to a bunch of kids. And again, the fact that it's, the coverage is just so much more widespread than it's ever been, And they're all taking advantage of it. God bless them.
Nika's closing in on a second 200 assist season. You've talked about you think she's been better this year than last. How much, when you go into a game now, do you think, I know what I'm going to get from her as you go along? And how long has that been there for you?
I do think Nika's a mercurial kind of personality, and when you get her in a space that lasts 10 games, 12 games, where she's operating at a real high level, the defense is spectacular, the ball handling, the vision, the assists, the making threes, everything just kind of, it's like a culmination of 4 years of work. And when her emotions get a little bit, out of whack, it's still something that she's working on. But certainly the consistency and what to expect and what you're going to get and the impact and the significance. You saw what happened in the Notre Dame game where she only played 10 minutes. We just can't function. And down in South Carolina when she really struggled. So it's become where it's crucial that she play great and stay out of foul trouble. And a lot of these kids, Nika's a little bit delusional. She thinks she's way better than she is, which is what makes these guys pretty good. And at the same time, you're at the DePaul game and you saw her go in for a layup and some lightning bolt hit her and she thought she was Kobe Mule. And she goes in there like this, one-handed, and misses a layup my grandson makes every day easily. And she just looked at me on the way back like she knew what I was going to say. Said, how in God's name can you shoot that shot unless you can stand here for half an hour and palm that ball? Those two things don't go together. I can palm it. Yeah. So it's when these kids stay within their limitations, Clint Eastwood said it best, man's got to know his limitations. When they stay within themselves and do the things that are comfortable and easy for them, they play their, they play their best. They play out of their minds. It's when all of a sudden things get sideways and they think I can throw this pass, that I'm the only one that can complete this pass. There's a reason no one else throws that pass.
So when you look at the assist totals at the end of her career, this year, next year, whenever she finally decides, and you see Mariah Jefferson, Diana Taurasi, Jennifer Ilardi, Renee Montgomery, Sue Bird, Nika Muhl.
Yeah, pretty hard to imagine when she first got here that she would ever be in that conversation. And what makes it even more amazing is that other group that you just mentioned. How many Olympians were they passing the ball to? Every possession. A bunch.
Half the Olympic team.
Half the Olympic team. So it's pretty easy to get 200 assists when every time the ball leaves your hand, it's going to an Olympian. So for Nika to not necessarily have had that opportunity, I think it's quite remarkable.
Geno, your international players have not been able to make money like your American player. Maybe coincidence that those are the two players who haven't decided to come back next year. But obviously, Aaliyah got a big deal this week in Canada. But how much does that need to change to even the playing field for international? And are you working at all with Senator Blumenthal, Senator Murphy on getting some changes?
I don't have enough material on, for instance, why college players that are here on a student visa cannot participate in NIL. So what kind of visa does an NBA player?
Work visa.
Okay, obviously it's a work visa. So is there a way, maybe that's another reason why they want to become employees. Now it's a work visa instead of a student visa. Is there a way, and I'm sure that's what they're looking at, is there a way that this can be an exception made? I understand why they want to limit the number of work visas, 100%, 100%, you know? You can't just give that to anybody for whatever reason. You want to give it to them. But, you know, if someone's coming over here and going to school and they're on a student visa, forget the athletes. So now it's a big deal because these athletes should be able to, well, when there was no NIL, what about the average kid that comes here that goes to school from another country that can't get a part-time job to pay for groceries? Or on campus. Right. Okay, so that means if we start finding people on campus to pay our international players, that would be okay. I don't think so. When we had Svetlana, for instance, there were a lot of people that were, you know, volunteering to hire her during summers or during semester breaks. And, you know, unfortunately, they couldn't take advantage of it. You would have to work on campus, which probably means what you're going to get paid is minimal, if at best. So if they can find a way to get these people treated the same as every other student athlete, great. I understand why they haven't up to this point, but if they can find a way. And no, I've not talked to any of our senators. But then I really didn't have conversations about NIL either, and about any of the other stuff that they voted on. So maybe they asked somebody who knows more than me about how this stuff works.
And now with this federal court ruling that basically says you can use NIL in recruiting, how much do you think that's going to change this game?
For some people, a lot. For some who've been using it since the deal came into place, won't change how they do business at all. This is how they've been doing business since they first said you can have name, image, and likeness. You just can't use it in recruiting. While they were writing that on the paper, You cannot use this. As they wrote each word, it was becoming more obsolete with each word they wrote, to the point that by the time they finished that sentence, 90% of the coaches in this country had already figured out they can't enforce that. They can't enforce that. So the NCAA people out there always do this. They come up with a rule, hasn't been thought out. Then after everybody breaks the rule and they can't enforce it, then they make it legal. It's like what Winston Churchill said about the U.S. during World War II. The Americans will always do the right thing after they've exhausted all other possibilities. The NCAA will always do the right thing after they've exhausted all the other possibilities.
Geno, who was the big star in your sport when you got here? Cheryl Miller?
What year was that?
84-ish?
Well, I remember when I was at UVA, I coached against Old Dominion when they had the best players in the country. When I was at UVA, we never played USC, and I don't remember when Cheryl graduated.
I think it was 84.
84? Yeah. So I would say, from what I remember, it was Nancy, Cheryl, were the two biggest names that a majority of the country knew. Carol Blazejowski was another one, but that was a little bit before that. But there weren't many because there just weren't. There wasn't any coverage of women's sports, so it was hard for anybody outside the coaching community to know who these kids were.
Do you remember them having like a special draw though within a faction of the youth basketball community? Obviously, there was no prism of social media. There weren't games on TV. It's a totally different world. But it was like their greatness played out in the dark to some extent. But I don't know if you remember it differently.
Yeah, the kids that went to basketball camp, the people that followed the game, yeah, Nancy and Cheryl were their icons. They were their Caitlin and Paige's. But it was a niche, it was a small group of people that actually knew that. And unfortunately, that's just being born at the wrong time. If those kids were playing today, it would be off the charts, the attention that they would get for the stuff that they did on the court. Yeah.
Speaking of attention, a lot of the attention that is unprecedented in many markets, you've been kind of a traveling circus. I think you've referred to it as for years.
For a long time.
Every American Athletic Conference team could guarantee itself a great home crowd at least once a year.
Yeah.
What has that been like? A lot of this is old hat to you. It's, what might be new to some fans in Iowa, for instance.
Yeah. We joked about it sometimes. We said we should start charging appearance fees. Tickets are $5. Tickets are $10. We come to town, tickets are $50. Somebody told me the Providence game is sold out next Saturday, and tickets are going for $150 in some places. That's something that we've experienced now since Rebecca's time, a long, long time. And you get used to it, you understand it, you appreciate it, that you're contributing to all the hysteria, and that's how you build a national brand like we have for so long. And we were willing to go to any part of the country to play anybody, anywhere, to spread that brand. So yeah, we were a little bit ahead of our time, and people now are starting to experience what we experienced for all those years, and they're also starting to appreciate more how difficult it is to be in that situation.
Geno, how is Paige playing the 4 this year? How's that kind of helped her maybe unlock new aspects of her games that you maybe didn't know before? Or how's it been good for her growth, like long-term wise?
It's funny, she only plays that position defensively. So the only difference in her game is she, instead of guarding a guard, is guarding whoever their other foreman is or whoever they're putting in that spot. So it hasn't changed her offense, hasn't changed her ability to impact the game offensively. What's changed to impact the game for her is, Nika KK. And the fact that the ball handling burden isn't all on her. Nika's more than willing to handle the ball every single time. But even Nika now, I find, just, she might take the inbounds pass and just throw it to KK. Be done with it, like, your turn. Whereas before it was only Paige and only Nika, only Paige and only Nika. So she's being defended a different way. And that has caused her to be able to do different things that we hadn't seen before, maybe. Like, if you notice, like, we post her up a lot now. Which you say, well, why didn't you do it more when she was a guard, Because usually there was another guy in there that we couldn't get rid of. Now you only need to move Aaliyah out of there, and there's plenty of room in there for her. And she's physically able to handle it, which she wasn't before. So she's able to do more things offensively because she's a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, a little more self-confident. That's part of growing and part of getting better every year. And believe me, there's still a whole notepad worth of stuff that I want to help her with before she leaves here that have to get addressed, that people on the outside maybe don't see.
Speaking of Paige, will she be on the wall tomorrow? Should she go on the wall tomorrow night?
No, she's not going on any wall tomorrow. We'll do it next year. Now she's coming back. No, if I put it on there, she might change her mind.
People talk a lot about how the best players make those around them better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always that general statement and no specifics. How does Paige make players better?
They're always open because two people have to guard her all the time. So somebody is always open. There's times when we specifically run something for Paige that we know she'll never get an opportunity to get that shot off, but somebody else will. So no one ever just lets her catch it and do whatever she wants. So just her being out on the floor gets Ash more open than she would be. Gives KK more room, more gaps to drive into. And she's unselfish enough that she's gonna find you and she's gonna help you get an easy shot. But it's even more than that. The best players that I've coached that can make other players better also do it in intangible ways, and how they talk to their teammates, what they say, when they say it, what kind of relationship do they have with the other players on the team? How can she teach them, listen, next time I get the ball in this situation, this is what I want you to do. That's how they help them get better, as much as any tangible thing.
How much pride has she been taking in her post defense, especially her shot blocking, and how much have you had to hear about that?
I hear about it every goddamn day, and it's funny you should ask that. Just yesterday in my office, she called herself a world-class defender. There's no way to prove it. That's why she can say it. It's like a lot of people in public office today. They can say things that can't be proven. And if they keep saying it long enough, people believe it. I don't believe it. And I have to give her credit. It's hard to outthink her on the defensive end. It doesn't mean it's not hard to bully her, and that doesn't mean it's not hard to, if you're the quickest kid on the floor, to go by her. I don't mean that. I mean, you have to be pretty smart and think one step ahead of her if you want to beat her, which is difficult to do. That's kind of what makes her a good defender. Her defense, what suffered a little bit this year is her off-the-ball defense and how she led the team in steals every year, because she could roam the perimeter and knew exactly where the ball was going all the time. Now, if she's in a fist fight scrum underneath the basket with some big guy, she don't have time to be running around stealing passes. So I'm looking forward to next year when she can go back out on the perimeter, because she was very, very disruptive defensively that way. You guys were not around when we were coaching Nikisha Sales, but it was one of the great lines of all time in the media when somebody asked her exactly that question. Nikisha, how are you so effective defensively? What makes you such a great defender and all that? She says, well, Coach, he always puts me in the other team's worst defender. And she comes out of the meeting. I said, are you out of your mind that you would actually say that? I mean, she was young, but that was the whole point. We let her play, free safety, middle linebacker, whatever you want to call it. And she just had a knack. Angel McCarthy was the best I've ever seen at that. When we played Louisville, we would say, okay, here's how you got to play against Angel. You got to throw it to her man. That way you keep her in that spot. Because if you know her man's over there and she's over there and you try to throw it to that guy, she'll steal it. And I think Paige is a lot like that. I don't know how good she is guarding her own man, but I do know she's pretty good at guarding the rest of the team.